Azure, I'm back here. Perhaps for the last time. Well, not for the last time with 3 houses. My god, I'm definitely gonna be playing this again and probably on the channel. For instance, when we do the DLC. But god, I was getting so far ahead of myself. But back here with Fire Emblem 3 houses for what will presumably be our finale. Hi, Sovis. So, having just, I don't even know what to say about what we left off last time. Having just felled Edelgard.
As the flow of time carved a new history for folk.
That happened. The Rising Flame wrote some stuff down and whatever.
The Empire finally met its end when the Imperial capital, the city of Enbar, collapsed.
Well, I don't know about the city collapsing. We killed a few people in the palace, and like 3 in the streets.
With Fodlan united as the Holy Kingdom of Fargus.
Right, I guess that would be all Kingdom now.
Still weak from her imprisonment, stepped down from her position.
Good call!
The Church of Seiros began to take the needed steps to reorganize.
Ah, and here, there's the Chosen Ones, the Enlightened Ones thing.
Beginning his reign as the king of the Holy Kingdom
Outfit was there,
Fargus,
so I guess that was me.
Which now included former Alliance and Imperial territories.
It
Text
did.
From the time
It's just
claimed the one who guided
playing
the
with some
kingdom as he
kids.
sought to
Hopefully not the
create a
ones
world free from
whose
oppression,
siblings he
became
killed.
The new Archbishop of the Church of Seiros.
That's sweet. Are they holding an ink blotter for me? Like just 5 of them holding a one pillow with an ink? Well, that's hilarious. Fine, I'll just sign all this paper stuff while Dimitri does that. Fine, goes and, plays with children. Fine, one of us gets the easy job, I see. The Goddess Tower.
I finally found you.
Hi! I was coming up here for some quiet, thanks.
It is a fine night. The stars seem closer than usual. Just like last time.
Yes, you're so tall that the UI is covering your eyes, but I can see the star's reflection in them. Even still. I thought you were in Ferdiad.
I needed to speak with you.
Did you now? With me?
Yes. When I left the capital, I told His Majesty that I would be leaving his service.
What? What?
He accepted my decision with a smile.
Why wasn't that a dialogue choice?
I do not think I have fully accepted it myself yet, to be honest.
Why would you leave him?
It was all so that I could give you this.
Okay. How am I meant to interpret?
To ask for your hand in marriage. I adore you.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you. And thank you for being upfront as well. I was worried this was going to be a much more drawn out and difficult to understand thing.
I understand that, as the new Archbishop, you cannot take marriage lightly. But even in the face of rejection, I cannot leave these words unspoken.
That's very sweet.
May
Don't
I
worry.
have your answer?
No rejection is coming. I accept.
You do? You will marry me?
That was the idea in saying I accept, yes. Plus, how we had all those plans about the greenhouse, so what, am I just gonna let those fall by the wayside? Oh, jeez. She went all kitty cat faced.
I am not good with words. Would you really have me, uninteresting as I am?
I don't think uninteresting is the word, my guy. I mean, just look at your hairstyle, and all the scars on your face, and then the fact that you showed up to propose wearing full battle armor. Uninteresting is not the word that's applicable. I appreciate your brevity. I would have you just as you are. I would have you just as you are.
I see.
What? Something surprised me.
Face? Is it so odd to see me laugh?
A little. You have a wonderful smile.
I see. Well then, I have one more request. I know it is sudden, but will you prepare to depart on a journey?
No, I'm the Archbishop. I have to stay here. It's like kind of the rules. I mean, sure, whatever for love. A journey.
I told you once before that I would like to show you the fields of Dusker in bloom.
Oh, if it's just for like a day or two, sure. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
I know that you cannot leave the monastery for long due to your position, but
I can't wait to see them. Sorry, I should have had that with a little more pep. I can't wait to see them.
To show you the flowers as they are meant to be seen, in my homeland, and to be by your side in all the days to come.
Aww.
Yes, it is a fine night indeed.
Yeah, it's much more orangey, the lighting on these stars, than it was a second ago. I think maybe the sun just exploded. Oh, that was so sweet. I appreciate your brevity. That's what I'm saying when someone proposes to me. Of course I'll marry you. I appreciate your brevity. Sweet. Battle data. Hell yeah. Why not? Let's have a look at who was MVP for a while here. Oh, wow. Felix was MVP at the Red Canyon. Right, okay, that makes sense, because he would have been having his lone wolf thing. And Dimitri, Felix, and Nat on the Magdred ambush. Where is that? Oh, right, that's when you killed Lenano. Good. I saw the Rite of the Rebirth was me. And when I became fighter, I was super powerful. Got the inheritance. That was when she got Lightning Axe. Probably gonna start seeing her pop up a lot more now on. The Underground Chamber, Rumors of Reaper. Right, Felix was good there. And then to do War for the Weak Paralogue. Right, well, that was his parallel, but also that was the time where he became Thief and was super speedy. And this Dimitri is Archer at the Field of the Eagle and Lion. I guess that would have been helpful, being fast. Rumored Nuptials. We did that? I guess we did, yeah. My Calamity, 6 turns. Forgotten in 9 turns. Wow. We actually do have a fair distribution. I mean, there's a lot of Dimitri and Byleth, but also some Annette, some Manuela. And some... Did you really only get the one? That seems surprising to me. Ooh, and Mage Flame. In the Sealed Forest. Don't remember her battling super hard in that one. Annette again. Ingrid, because she's becoming a warlock at this point. Is Annette already Fortress Knight? Look at her go. Battle of Garreg Mach. Ooh, yeah. Annette would have been helpful there. And yeah, then we brought Carla over to Hunting by Daybreak. Obviously, I was the MVP there. Oh, Dimitri. And Manuela again. She was still sniper at that point, getting all those hunter's volleys, I guess that makes sense. Ah, and finally a Sylvain. There we go. Is there anyone we haven't seen yet? Mercy, I guess. The Great Bridge Coup. To war at Gronder. Flame was the MVP there? Wow. And to do for reclaiming the capital. Heck yeah. Silver Maiden. And now his eyes are less baggy. And then me. I guess Mercy never got one. Because she was like, wasn't getting wide variety of kills. Saving Dareju. Right, we did do that in 3 turns, didn't we? Assault on Enbar. And cost the Imperial capital. Wowie. Sniper Dimitri saved our life. Our collective life, I suppose. Nice. And now it starts going into the endings, right? So what I thought would be kind of fun is if I stopped it on each ending and, well, after reading it, broke down their build at the end of the game and just anything else I wanted to say about their character. So I believe it'll go through it, but oh, I said it in Flame. I guess that means Manuela wasn't with him in the end. Most interesting. We'll see where she was. Should I give this some kind of voice, or should I just read it normally?
Well, Flame disappeared soon after.
While Flames disappeared soon after the war, Seth stayed at the monastery and worked to restore the authority of the Church of Seros. Doing away with his old strictness, he adopted a tolerant stance toward all and encouraged his followers to do the same. When he was satisfied that the message was received, he vanished from the monastery. Several centuries later, a man and a woman in ancient attire emerged to a Foden that had drastically changed. When she asked him, the man beside her, if it would be alright in this new era to call him Father, he said that perhaps it would be better to remain on the safe side. And then she did it anyway, because she does not give a damn. So I got these two together in the end anyway. I guess I had paired them together for a while. I kind of thought I'd paired Sedith and Manuel enough that it would change it in the end. But apparently not. She'll probably find a way to be happy anyways, knowing her. So Sedith obviously was a non-build. I only had him as a partner to characters. But he got some helpful adjacent follow-ups. Now as for Flame, obviously her magic is absurdly good. Making her a Dark Knight was cool because being able to take her magic, her powerful magic on the run, to go fast, to go supersonic racing around the map was amazing. And for Kanto especially, because she has like no health. She gets like 30. So even against magic people, she can get the heck beaten out of her in the short term. So it is good to have her be able to like throw out magic and then retreat. Some flaws to that build were I didn't get to use much of the land stuff because her strength just didn't grow very fast and her defense was bad enough that she couldn't really do any of the things most mounted magic peeps could. And not to mention, and the same thing goes for Mercedes, she has some really good white magic spells that since I didn't put her in a white magic class, she wasn't getting the full use of. Like she would have had more rescues if she was in Gremory or in Bishop, for instance. But all the way through, she was she ended up being a really solid unit. More than I was expecting for a mounted... Ugh. Power blip, sorry. Haha! I am on a UPS. Take that, fate. Mounted Mage, she did exceptionally well anyways. Flame the Sunblowing Princess and Sedith the ally of the Archbishop. That's not a very... I feel like we could have given you a better title, Sedith. I'm sorry about that one. Manuela, Divine Songstress. Here she is. Manuela left Garreg Mach to build her own academy in a small, war-torn town. There she contributed heavily to the rebuilding efforts while teaching future generations the necessary skills of survival. Though she never married or had children of her own, she spent the last life of her years of her life happily devoted to her students. Happily mine. So it not all, even though true love, if you will, evaded her. She was still having all kinds of one-night stands getting drunk and making problems for everyone around her, I assume. In just the way that she always wanted to. Now, as for her, obviously her build was a little wobbly all over the place for a bit, because it was like, I was like, oh, let's do a bit of bow stuff, and then obviously because I recruited her later than my normal students, she had like a bunch of stuff already spec'd into sword and junk, so it was like, and faith. So it was kind of hard to get her into sniper, but then once she got to sniper, it was awesome. And then I was like, oh, let's do assassin. Actually, I can't remember which one I did first. And then she got lethality. And then when we finally got her to bow knight, which was like for the last 3 missions, that was when lethality started to come in real in handy. And she absolutely tore through those later missions. The music here is also the greatest song that was ever committed to video game, by the way. Not this part necessarily. I like the part where it does the solo violin, but this part is also good. The whole thing is good, is my point. Anyways, back to Manuela. Bow Knight with lethality was the greatest thing I ever accidentally did. That was awesome. Having her to be able to do a rapier hit in here or there as well with Hexblade equipped was good for earlier on, before I was just loading up with bows. And to be honest, in that last fight, she saved us, right? She was able to break the barrier. I mean, maybe Mercy could have done it as well, but she broke the barrier from far away and then was able to help a little bit with support. I guess Dimitri already had most of his friends around him, but point being, her build did not feel like it was like a bad choice or anything like that. Her defenses both sucked, but that was fine because she was mounted and she could run away. And her dodge was good anyway, so if someone did manage to try and hit her, they wouldn't have a good time of it. And it was because her strength and magic was so balanced, she could pull Hexblade or Magic Bow or Normal Bow as the need arose. Her physical damage wasn't like incredible by the end, but with the damage variety she had and the lethality, it ended up balancing, I'd say. Farewell, Manuela. Enjoy your teaching. Oh, Ash and Mercedes. Not what I was expecting. Mercedes the Benevolent Soul and Ash the Arrow of Justice. Man, they really shortchanged you on the name there, Mercy. 581 battles, 250 victories, 164 battles, and 40 victories for Ash. That checks out with the relative classes. After the war, Ash was formally knighted and appointed the new head of House Gaspard, which had no successors. The young and inexperienced lord faced a great deal of difficulty in governing. Oh, poor Ash, just out there, people asking about needling with all those political questions, and he's just like, still kind of working on learning how to read, actually, but I'll get back to you on that. Though he was famously tenacious and never lost heart, it was perhaps only due to the constant counsel of his wife Mercedes that he managed to overcome all obstacles. When not busy governing their territory, the couple lifted one another's spirits by baking delicious sweets for each other. I can read. The tradition was so heartwarming that it became popular for husbands and wives in that region to do the same for generations. Aw, God, Power. Stop. I know that this is enough to cause anyone's heart to skip a beat, but that doesn't work the same for you, Power Grid. Let's get to build for these two. So obviously Ash, he had some good growth all around, but with his being normally suited to being an archer class, he had lots of dex and luck and speed, which incidentally was very good for when I made him bishop, because then his dex and luck grew like hell, so he was getting crits when I didn't expect. That really helped, but also he had brilliant crit avoidance, and with his speed going up so high, he was great at dodging, and so he got so fast that basically no one could outspeed him, and he was able to tank things that a lot of other people couldn't, just by virtue of only getting hit once by them. And since all his growths were like decent all around, he wasn't getting one-shotted by stuff, so he could very frequently was able to have him tank, where normal people would get double-hitted by something. He would get only one-hitted, and he could tank it and maybe even dodge it. So dodge tank Ash was not what I expected from making him a bishop, and also he was a stupendous healer. I mean, I guess if you make anyone a bishop, that gives them extra heal points, and then give them the healing staff, they're gonna be pretty solid anyway. But it worked out well for him, I'd say. And downsides, I guess, no physical damage really. And even magic damage by the end kind of suffered a bit, but he got some crits early on in the time skip that were very helpful. But overall, no regrets. Making him a healer was a good idea. It's a shame he doesn't get Agna's arrow as a reason spell, or does he? I guess we didn't get as far enough to tell. Maybe that's a Rhea only spell. Anyways, Benevolent Soul Mercedes. Hers was probably the most misguided build choice I had, because Mercedes' strength and defense are naturally pretty, and speed for that matter, are naturally pretty weak growing, and her magic is really well growing. I think the biggest mistake I made was never giving her, or I gave her Bolt Axe really late. I think Aura Gauntlets would have also been a good idea for her. I guess that my brain was just like, well, we already gave those to Annette, let's have some variety, but it's just both a magic weapon. I should have just given her one. But I mean, obviously by the end, we had spec'd her so hard into strength and everything. I mean, those bonkers crits with all those the killer axe and everything, her amazing training gauntlet prowess ended up being pretty respectable as a barbarian type. We used the Axe of Oaken Rasara like once. I can't believe that. I was so hyped to use that so many times, but then it always turned out to be that what I preferred to do was use the Killer Axe or the Training Gauntlets, it seemed. Also so dope that this piece has like a bunch of bits of the other music in it. Like, hang on, it's about to do it here. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. That plays in The Long Road, right? There are bits of like all the main battle themes mixed in anyways, I think. Oh yes, and the last thing about Mercy's build that was awesome was, so her res didn't actually grow that much once we started speccing her into like barbarian stuff like warrior and all that, but she had a base of it that carried her pretty well for the first part of the game. She wasn't dying from magic too hard for like the first 60% of it, I would have said. And then she started getting outspeeded and it was bad, but she was able to put in physical damage like with the training gauntlets against a mage without worrying about dying, hence Mercy Mage Killer, which was awesome. So I don't have too many regrets in the end. I guess I just should have given her another magic weapon was really the thing. But these two bacon sweets for each other, that's so sweet. Sylvain and Ingrid, look at that. Where does that leave Annette, I wonder? Because I was totally expecting her and Mercy to be together after all that. And Sylvain and Felix to be together, actually. Does that mean Felix and Annette ended up? Yeah, what about Dimitri? I could just read it and know. Sincerest of Knights Sylvain and Stalwart Knight Ingrid. Knight and Knight. 283 battles on Sylvain, 91 victories, and 468 battles with 180 victories on Ingrid. Makes sense because she was much more offensively capable. He was a little more balanced. As Margrave Gautier, Sylvain devoted his life to improving relations with the people of Sreng. Under his leadership, nobles were persuaded that relics and crests were not necessary, as they'd previously thought. Good. Though he went down in history as an extraordinary lord, he could not have done so without the constant support and counsel of his wife Ingrid, whose wisdom and tenacity ensured that the people would prosper. Sylvain was ever loyal to his beloved wife. The couple had many children, and while not one of them bore a crest, they were all equally and wholeheartedly loved. It would be pretty dumb if they didn't have a crest and they just pulled another, what's-his-face? How did I forget his brother's name? Miklon. They were just like, since I devoted my life to changing things, let's ruin it all by being the worst. No, of course they wouldn't. Nice, and that's cool for an ending for Ingrid as well, because of all that stuff she was talking about with Seth, where she was like trying to find where am I going to go after this war. I got to start thinking about that and how that pertains to my bloodline and how I want to change the things that were weird for me as a kid. Weird is maybe a bit of an understatement, and so she got to spend her life doing that. That's awesome. As for builds, Sylvain as a bishop then to a holy knight. Holy Knight Sylvain was actually pretty great because he's got a passion for reason, or a hidden talent for reason, right? So that ended up being really cool, having him a lot of spell variety in him. But then also his strength and defense were pretty respectable, so he grew quickly, and so he was able to put in solid work with lance and solid work with magic. I think he was probably our most balanced fighter by the end. And I mean, equally, like with, for instance, with Ashe, it was like it would be, or like with Ingrid even. She could put in work with magic, and then when it came to fighting with a sword, it was kind of like, well, we didn't do much of that in the latter 25% of the game. But Sylvain never was stopped being balanced in both. He struggled with magic at first, though, because his growth isn't good in that, I think. And that was probably the biggest flaw with him. I probably should have given him more magic things, because his magic just didn't grow fast, which also resulted in his heals not being very impressive, for whom I was originally considering to be my secondary healer. But considering his Canto mounted range and physic, he was able to reach a large range to heal, so not too much to complain about in that build. And likewise with Ingrid, at first I was like worrying that because I was putting her on magic, her strength was going to suck and that was going to be a problem, but it actually didn't end up being a problem because her magic was so overwhelmingly good, which I didn't expect at all. She just doesn't seem like the mage type, but she was an exceptional mage. And with all that ice stuff at the beginning, she got so many crazy crits that saved us early on. I guess I was a little sad that she lost out her sword fighting ability that she had earlier on. Well, I mean, it was never super good, but she just seems like, with how, just aesthetically speaking, with how much of like a stalwart knight she is. It's just like the image of her rushing into battle with a sword and then like throwing spells was kind of what I was aiming for by the end, and that didn't really end up happening. I mean, she was able to do good damage with Lewin, because her strength wasn't vastly behind, I wouldn't have said. Anyway, both pretty solid builds, with like minor drawbacks here and there. Lower magic in Sylvain, lower sword fighting ability with Ingrid, but in the end, they didn't really need it, is the thing. Because Sylvain had some high-level spells, and it was good with the lance anyway. And it was still pretty balanced. It would have been nicer to have higher magic with heals. Anyways, moving on. Who's next? Ingrid and Gilbert. Oh, interesting. And did I say Ingrid and Gilbert? Sorry, Annette and Gilbert. Bloomed over achiever Annette, and 952 battles, 2 20 victories, and veteran patriot Gilbert. I guess that's why Annette didn't go back with Mercedes, but I thought those two were hanging out way more than Annette and Gilbert. Gustav discarded the name of Gilbert and reaffirmed his, I think it still says Gilbert on the left side, but it's like the first line is just, he's not Gilbert anymore. Gustav discarded the name of Gilbert and reaffirmed his oath of fealty to King Dimitri and the royal family. After returning to Ferdiad, he reunited with his wife, who had returned to live with Baron Dominic, and his beloved daughter Annette, who had begun teaching at the capital school of sorcery. Though it was initially an awkward reunion, over time the family rekindled their love for one another. As the shadow of war receded from the kingdom, the three spent their days happily making up for lost time. Nice! And Annette, lesson 1! Throw away everything you knew about magic. This is an axe! 952 battles, 220 victories, 207 battles, and 84 victories. As for build, I mean, making Annette a Fortress Knight in the very first run I ever did of this game was a stroke of genius unlike anything I will ever replicate. There is no flaw with that build. No flaw. Okay, maybe a bit. She sort of is weak sauce with physical attack for a little bit before you get the 2 axe fairs, and she's also struggles a bit before she gets lightning axe early on in the story. But the second she gets past that, indestructible, flying ahead with lightning axe. Okay, indestructible. She probably could have been using more defense buffs on her earlier on, but didn't end up being that much of a big deal, I didn't think. Were I to change something, I'm thinking if I wanted to make her like, because what were the skills I had on in the end? Axe prowess, of course, axe fair, axe crit, armored blow, and then pav eyes. Right, okay. I'm trying to think if maybe if I spec'd her into assassin, got her lethality, and then swapped that over armored blow, maybe that would be like ridiculously good. Not much to complain about that build. Pretty great. Gilbert, we obviously got late and did put work into him much later, but by the end, he was a decent mortal savant. Good magic damage. I probably would have been wiser to just spec him into all warlock or kept a seal so we can make him dark bishop or something. Because by the end, his sword fighting was really nothing compared to his magic ability. So if I leaned into that, he probably would have been better. But, and he obviously was getting outspeeded by everything because he's meant to be an armored, or he had all the stats for an armored knight. So he got outspeeded, never dodged anything, and had pretty poor luck, so got critted by stuff. And so he was a bit like Mercy, where you kind of had to have him go first. But he had a lot of health, so even if he got doubled, as long as he didn't get critted, he was usually surviving at least 1 turn or something. But if I were to, even though Mortal Savant Gilbert looked insanely cool, if I were to change anything about that build, I probably would have just focused all in magic, would have been the solution. And there are you two, anyway. Dimitri and Felix. Oh, interesting. Also not one I was really picturing. Savior King Dimitri with 698 battles and 305 victories, and Felix the Shield's successor, 131 battles, 53 victories. As a dancer, he didn't get much chance to fight by the end. After his coronation, Dimitri assumed the throne of the Holy Kingdom of Fargus and spent his life ruling justly over Fodlan. At his every step, at his side, every step of the way was his right-hand advisor, Duke Felix Fraldarius. Their lifelong bond grew so strong over time that when Dimitri finally passed, it is said that Felix's grief was more potent than even the Queen's. We all know Dimitri married Felix. There was no queen. The stories of their lives were passed down to future generations as chivalric tales that rivaled those of Lugh, the King of Lions, and his sworn friend Kyphon. Or Kiffin, I never know how to say it. Sniper Dimitri was an absolute monster. I like, especially by the end, there was no stopping him with Hunter's Volley. And it was especially good for him because of his high dex and speed, and really good strength. I mean, being a lord, he has good stats overall, but I'd say his dex was a winner. Yeah, because his speed wasn't as pertinent by the end because he could Hunter's Volley just to get 2 anyways. I think if I were to change anything about what I did, I would have focused so much harder into bow earlier. I think the getting the riding for the dex was good, but then I didn't need to focus in the heavy armor for the weight minus because he ended up just using Hunter's Volley anyway. And I certainly didn't need to keep him in Great Lord or the one that comes after Brave Lord or whatever it is. He didn't need the masteries for those. Those were kind of underwhelming because Paraceline only goes as long as you stay in the Great Lord class, and then Pomp and Circumstance, he had charisma enough for good gambits anyway, so why the hell? I should have just kept him in Sniper so that he could have been doing Hunter's Volley every minute of every day. As for Felix, making him a dancer was actually pretty sweet because he naturally is good with swords, so he grew in swords quickly to have sword avoidance and sword prowess, so he was an exceptional dodge tank, and just high speed, so more dodge tank, so he was a brilliant dodge tank. I think the obvious thing for him is I should have been building his authority way sooner so he could get the Dancers Battalion. I just didn't even consider that would be a thing. I was like, oh, I just wanted to have his Lone Wolf bonus, but by the end, since I wasn't having him fight very often anyway, it wasn't really useful. So I should have been doing more battalion stuff with him earlier on. And, I mean, he died easily if he did get hit. so I probably could have done a little more to help him, give him more avoidance somehow, but overall I have very few complaints with that, and I guess that leaves only myself and Dedue. Very well done, you two. Anyway, I'm stunned. I could have sworn Annette and Mercy were... Annette and Mercy, I'm pretty sure, had each other as their most close ally, and I think Sylvain and Felix as well. And I think Dimitri and Flame were pretty close, so I was surprised that all of this turned out the way it did. But it did. Savior King and the Shield's successor. Farewell, you two. And finally, last but not least, of course. Oh wow, I got a lot of battles on me too. Not as many as Dedue. Guardian of Order, Byleth, and taciturn devotee, Dedue. A year after Byleth was appointed to succeed Rhea as the new bishop, she announced her marriage to Dedue, who had resigned his position as the king's vassal. Their wedding ceremony, brightly colored with all of the most beautiful flowers from Dusker, set the tone for their happy life together. Oh, I want a picture! I'm sure there's fan art of that. I want to see the wedding ceremony, just flowers everywhere. Dedue served as an intermediary between Fargus and the church, alongside alongside the bishop, committed to improve relations with foreign nations as part of the rebuilding effort. Nice, so not even just, like, all of them. I guess that means Sreng and Elmira and everything. Sweet. Good man. In their later years, they retired to the Dusker Peninsula, where they spent the remainder of their lives gardening in peace and quiet. Where I'm sure Byleth continued to just grow endless amounts of root vegetables for the Ambrosia, and just kept mailing them to Annette every year. Nice, so Byleth as a Wyvern Lord is pretty dope. I mean, given how able she is with physical combat, I think giving her making her mounted so that she can go far with her physical combat is sensible. And as we surely bore witness to, it got us a lot of early kills on bosses, like with Arundel and with Hubert, and it gave us an easier time battling Edelgard. Byleth more or less excels at most classes. Has a bit of weakness to magic stuff, but you can still do it, I think. I mean, Enlightened One has magic anyway, so. Flaws with her build, she had trouble with speed and defense early on into her Wyvern days. She was getting doubled by everything and dying real fast, so I probably just should have supplemented that with a few speed boons and stuff like that. And I didn't really, so she just kind of struggled along for a bit. But other than that, I can't complain much about that build. Getting all those double hits with the axes and then flying around wielding the bow was awesome. Maybe I could have given her a bit more bow prowess so she could have rode around with a killer bow, and that would have been more dope. I don't know. Mostly, I couldn't complain too much about her build. As for Dedue, making him an assassin was a good choice, I think. He sort of struggled a bit around the beginning and around the end, because by the end, the enemies had so much accuracy that he wasn't dodging stuff as fast and getting doubles as much, but especially around the middle of the game. I mean, it was also tricky because he also lost a bunch of levels in the time when he was recovering from his wounds after the siege on Verdiad that he and a bunch of his mates committed to get Dimitri out. So he had a lot of ups and downs, but when he was at peak, like especially in the pre-time skip, he was so fast and so indestructible and very evasive as well. Because of his naturally good defense, and then also having the dodge on top of that, just unkillable, was so good. Like, do you remember when in the place where when you're trying to save Flame from the Death Knight in like the boiler room or whatever, and he and Ash just roared up the left side or the right side, and he was just taking no nonsense from anyone. Absolutely sweet build. As for ways to improve it, I sort of feel like I did as good with him as could be expected, given he has a weakness to speed and stuff like that, and like he isn't naturally inclinated to sword or bow. And then we also tried to raise him in flying to get alert stance, which in the end ended up helping quite a bit, even though we didn't get the better version. But he has a weakness to flying too. And we also had to get him riding for the dex thing. I think what I should have done is way earlier on started speccing him into the mounted things to get him the dex thing and the alert stance. He might have managed alert stance plus by the end if we had, and that would have made things a lot easier by the end, but can't really complain. He was still really solid. And getting with all those lethalities and the amazing crits by the end with the Ashaya Sword, that was a great build option for him. Nothing more to say there. Have fun, you two crazy kids. That is where the recap of where all our friends ended up was. So now it goes to credits, does it not? I do believe it does. Fireflies. Nice. What about credits? There we go. So I'll let these play while I babble my closing thoughts of the game, shall I? Broad strokes. Acting and writing, pretty high quality, hey? It's very iconic. As for writing and story, I think this game does excel. A lot of people would point to it not being quite as tight as some of the other games in the series, especially with the branching narrative. Means not all the narratives are born equally exactly. For instance, Crimson Flower, it feels like the story kind of rushes a little at the end, and you don't get maybe as much out of Edelgard's route as you would want for such a complex character. Sorry. And I've always kind of felt personally, after having completed all 4 of them, that the Azure Moon route is kind of the one with the best arc. Which wouldn't be so bad, it's just that then the other ones kind of pale in comparison a little. Like, it sort of feels like with Claude, the majority of his difficulty, like the story challenge of him, he experiences before his time at the monastery, and then after the war is over when he has to go do all that stuff with Almire. So it kind of feels like you come in at the... Not that the war is easy for him, obviously, because it's not easy for anyone, but you come in at the one of the less interesting parts of his story, I guess. It feels like it would be cool to have, if you did the Golden Deer route, if there was maybe like a flashback to earlier parts of his life, so you could see a little more of that development. And ditto for Edelgard, I guess. It feels like the most of her strife is in the 5 years without Byleth in her route, so you miss out on that, kinda. It's like, she's like, thank you so much for supporting me in the pre-time skip, and then after the time skip, she's like, God, it was so hard without you, and everyone was like, man, she really had a hard time without you, but then once you're back, it's like a matter of months before the war is over, so you kind of... It feels like it would have been nicer to see more of those characters' strife in their roots. Whereas Dimitri, you get the full... I mean, obviously there's parts of it you don't see from before the monastery, but you get the full effect of his arc throughout his thing, and it just feels like it would have been nice if the other House Lords had a bit more of that. But the thing is, the supports also carry a lot of this game's character development is the thing, and those are there on every route, and they're basically all good. There are a lot of good ones anyway, like they're enough that in every route I feel like there's good development going on, and so that's kind of like how it balances for me, with you not getting to see as much of Claude and Edelgard's arcs as I would have liked. And then you could also say stuff about Silver Snow. I mean, because you're only joining with Sedith and Flayn really half... I mean, they're with you in the pre-time skip, but you don't get as much of them through that halfway point. And most of their plot is, like, hidden because they're in hiding. So their arc is kind of, in the Silver Snow thing, is just sort of gradually coming to the realization that Rhea is not really... It maybe wouldn't be a good idea if she came back to rule after being kidnapped and all. Time sail. The music, there's a good point. I mean, I don't really need to talk about the music. I've sung it incessantly as we've played through the game. The music is incredible in this game. I'm trying to think, like, is there a song that stands out? I mean, I always loved Chasing Daybreak. Tempest of Seasons grew on me in this run as well. And there's a bunch of music from the DLC. I've listened to Tempest of the Corridors so much, even though I haven't played the DLC yet, but it's real good. Now, and regarding story, just because I don't want to get too far off topic before I go there, because there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of stuff I really like about the story. I like how, like, it feels like each house leader does fulfill some kind of role in the story, regardless of your route. Even though they're kind of the good guy if you choose their route, more so than the others. I would say that, like, in all routes, Edelgard is the most right of all the house leaders. Because Dimitri is kind of... He's not, throughout the story, always focused on how do I change the future. He's, like, going through his own thing. But then, using that, he adds... Did I just see voice directing Greg Chun? I thought it was... What's-his-face? Patrick... The guy who plays... Patrick... Seitz, who plays Death Knight / Yuritsa / Emil. Maybe they both directed it. I did not realize that Greg Chun directed this. Dope. Look at all these actors that I know some of the names of going up. Amazing. That's another thing I can commend this game for, is introducing to me to a bunch of actors that I had heard in other stuff, but, like, not known the name of, and then like now it was like I had an excuse to, like, look them up. An amazing cast in this game, honestly. even in the incidentals, like, are going up the screen now, that you can see some famous, well, it's not famous, who cares about famous, but important, well-acted names. Names I've known as good actors and other stuff. Anyways, sorry, I always get distracted whenever I see something important go by in the credits. Something I know about. I obviously won't be able to comment on any of the game designers, because I don't know any of them as much as I would actors. But they all did a great job, I'd have said. People dunk on this game's visuals, but it doesn't bother me at all. Whatever. The oranges are flat. Oh no. Where was I speaking? Right, sorry. Edelgard it feels like it's always the most right, and it feels like Claude is the least wrong, and those feel like they are important story roles for them both to fulfill in each route, in fact. Because it has weight when you have to go up against Claude in Edelgard's route, when Claude really kind of isn't doing anything wrong except being quasi-aligned with the church. He's mostly just kind of fighting back in that route, so it adds stakes to have to fight him when he isn't really, compared to like Dimitri in that route, is like still sort of like he's a little less like going around feasting on the corpses of his enemies like he is in Azure Moon, but he's still not really in his right head, I wouldn't say, in that, and he's making bad choices. And Rhea, obviously, though pitiable, is obviously like way too into her own Oedipus complex to be helpful with any of the problems that are going on in the world. And she is utterly blind to all the problems that her management style, if you will, raises. Or raise. I forget if I said problems or problems. Raise, right. Edits. But then Rhea fills that role too. She's this kind of if she wasn't there, then it would kind of feel like, why is any of this still going on? She needs to be there so that you understand it's a figurehead that promotes this kind of thing, that lets this stuff stand. Or is among the reasons. Because she's a well-respected and liked individual, but she's perpetuating this awful system. And then Dimitri and all of them, I mean, he's a bit of a rogue element in all of them, even his own route, but he kind of, because for him, he becomes a just ruler, and he sort of fixes things within the Fodlan area, but he doesn't exactly go on to change a lot of the societal problems as Claude and Edelgard might, or in fact do in their routes. Furthermore, along the line of story, a lot of people will criticize that those who slither in the dark are kind of lame villains, because they're just kind of like, I mean, they have a good point, because their whole thing is like, we started to devise technology, and then God was all like, whoa, don't do that, you'll make wars, only I can give power. And then those who slither in the dark were like, hey, that seems like not okay. Why aren't we allowed to research things? Then we could find ways to help people. Hence them not liking the whole god race of people, like the Nabateans and then anyone who follows the church. But then you get to the actual like prominent villains of those who slither in the dark, and it's like Kronya and Solon and Talus, and they're all just kind of like filthy, wretched humans. We must eradicate them all. And you're just kind of like, all right, got it. Just gonna crit you in 2 turns and be done with it. So, I guess I may agree with that criticism a little, but I feel like there are enough interesting characters that those guys don't have to be like the most interesting. Maybe that's not a very critical standpoint of me. Maybe I should say make them all interesting, but I don't know. When I finished the game, my first impression wasn't like, man, that would have been so much better if, like, Talus was more interesting, because I felt like there were enough people who were interesting to carry it. Anyways, so obviously the whole, more along the story, the whole crest system, and a lot of the systems that, like, the hierarchies have analogs to the real world in really interesting ways. I almost get the feeling like, with crests being inherited genetically, it's almost like they're asking the hypothetical question, what if you actually could link, like, genetics to... What's the word I'm trying to say? It's like... What if there was a legitimate argument for like racial superiority or something like that? And then that becomes a powerful message, because obviously the end result of the story is it does not goddamn matter. Just let people live their lives. If for whatever reason genetically this group of people is like stronger, they can lift heavier things than this one, social Darwinism is not the answer. Don't kill people for that. Just let them live their life. That's very much kind of how it ends up here. Like, if people are stronger, then sure, maybe you can make use of that, but is that any reason to ruin the lives of entire groups of people and disadvantage them in a way that is just completely out of anyone's control? No. No, it is not. The end. Good. It's not the end of my ramble. I rambled so long that I have even more stuff to say after the credits. How about that? But I will press A on that, so that it goes back to the title screen. We can see our new title screen. I think it's just gonna kind of be the way... Oh, let's have another file after that so we can go watch the end if we really wanted to. For any reason. Like, say, if I forgot to record it or something. Ah, yes, okay. The screen is now tinted sort of yellow. Great. What a reward! So what have I spoken to? I've spoken to the visuals. I like the anime styling. I like the portraits are kind of weird. They all look sort of bleached out, like you put someone in front of like a 1,000 watt light. Is 1,000 watts a lot? 1,000 lumens maybe is what I meant. Everyone looks kind of weird and pale, like more than they do in the models. And I guess that's another thing you could criticize about the characters, is it's not an especially diverse cast. It's like 38 white people and then one black dude whose story arc revolves around him very frequently being discriminated against for that. And it's like, okay, I get that we're obviously taking the stance that racism is bad here, but is it okay if he talks about something else? Like, is it okay if he enjoys himself in another way in another scene? And he does here and there. Regarding music, I mean, I already ranted, and there's so many good things in music. So many good, like... People sometimes criticize that there's a lot of remixes of Edge of Dawn in the battle themes, and yes, there is. It comes in Fodlan Winds. It comes in a lot of the boss themes. But how are you gonna dunk on Shambhala Area 17 Redux Thunder? That's the best song. What about Indomitable Will? It's so good. How can you not love these? Funeral Flowers is like the best boss theme in anything ever. I won't play it here because we've played enough themes right now. I'm missing a song. Huh. Interesting. I don't have the DLC installed, so it's not one of those. Weird. Don't even know what that'd be. Sorry, let me not get distracted. So I've spoken to basically everything but the gameplay now, which, I mean, weirdly, I don't actually have a lot to say. There are a lot of changes that they've made to the normal formula. Combat arts. Again, I haven't played Shadows of Valencia, so the most recent game before this I'd played, I guess, would be Fates. And I haven't played very far in that either. I think this was the first one with combat arts, though. Maybe it's in Shadows. I don't know. Do they trivialize some things? Yes. Did they make up for it by making all the enemies sort of busted in higher difficulties? Yes. So you do need the combat arts. It's not like they're too supplementary. Like, one or two of them feels a bit broken. Like, I feel like Hunter's Volley could have been nerfed slightly. Maybe lower the crit chance on it a bit or something. But they make for cool build options. Anyway, like, I never ended up using Ash's Shatter Slash, but it's a cool option to have him with. I like the class mixing you can do where you get the mastery from this class. So for instance, I mean, Mulmula is like a perfect example of that. Got lethality from that class, put it onto Bow Knight, and now I'm one-shotting people from 6 squares away. Like that's and just because I like that, of all the different build choices, that was a thing I picked. So there's a lot of player expression in the skills you can set up, as well as the different combat arts you can get, and then just also just speccing into different classes to get a higher growth there. So for instance, I mean, not that I would have, because I liked Annette as an Armored Knight, but what I could have done was have her stay in heavy armor class just so that her defense grows a whole bunch. Not that it really did. And then at the end of the game, spec her into a magic class. So now she's a sorcerer throwing out magic like every other turn, but with a high defense or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff you can do and a lot of expression there that I think is cool. And I think I like the... I don't know that I would say I prefer it over the old style, because I do like the old style where everyone kind of has their own path and maybe you get to choose one or two classes here, or maybe it's just kind of like in the Tellius games where it's more or less just one set of classes, but you just grow advance through them. What I'm talking about here is I also kind of like how freely you're able to develop the classes in this game. Just be like, hey, I want to do to fly. Let me teach them how to fly, and then I can put them into a flying class, or just use some of the stuff I get from flying. For instance, maybe I grow someone in sword, but I don't actually equip the stuff that gives them more accuracy. I just grow them in sword so they can use a legendary sword, or a more powerful sword, whatever. It makes for very many interesting build options. And the strategy stuff is all cool, and then there's lots of cool things with like movement, combat arts, like swapping people's places. Stuff like alert stance lets you make decisions between whether I want to stand still this turn, or maybe if I want to trade an item with you, and that's a different outcome. Level design, I mean, and Awakening is a culprit here too. I detest when they add reinforcements that can then attack in the same turn, because they're full stop is no way to predict that the first time through. Which in this game you have pulses, so it's like roll my eyes and back it up. Awakening, there are no pulses, so what the hell? I just have to start the whole mission again now. Thanks, game. I don't know what I'm talking about Awakening for, but goddamn, I hate it when they just add reinforcements and let them attack in the same turn. And especially, what the hell, like in Deirdre, remember they were like, reinforcements are gonna come from this square, stand here to block it. And then in the palace at the end, they were like, we should probably block off those reinforcements, but they didn't show what square to stand on. So I just had to guess, and I guessed wrong. And I don't even know if I could have guessed right. But it didn't tell me, so how was I supposed to know? Little annoyances like here and there. I wouldn't say they bog the experience down too much, but If you look at my face during the last episode, I'm sure you can see my patience just wane. Either hoozles. So yeah, I covered that what if genetic inferiority was real is the hypothetical question Crests could be asking as a writing tool, which is just such an interesting idea. What if the Fire Emblem wasn't some kind of legendary weapon or artifact like it is in the other game? What if it's symbolic of racial elitism? Like, what a story choice. I think that probably about sums up all my thoughts in this game, though. Just some really brilliant writing choices and acting and characterization and some cool-ass epic moments and gameplay options just make for a really dramatically satisfying experience. And I mean, the characters are just so lovable as well. There's a reason this game, like, ships of this game were, like, the most searched thing on AO3 for, like, half a decade now. Very well, I could talk about this game longer, but I better not. That's this playthrough more or less concluded, I shall say. So, at this point, so, for the other games we're currently playing, we've still got Tales of Symphonia, Omori, I don't know exactly how. Omori, probably more like, I'm probably gonna keep saying Omori though, just because I have been. And Fire Emblem Path of Radiance are still the four that are sort of active. And Yume Nikki is there too, but I've sort of stopped that for the moment. I will come back to it, I promise. Just I need to reorient myself with the map because it's been way too long. So what I'm thinking now is the playthrough, we used to be alternating 3 houses every time, but since I'm guessing Zestiria will be more or less the longest game of all the ones we're playing, I think the play order now goes, since Symphonia was the last game that wasn't 3 houses or Zestiria that we played, it goes Zestiria, Omori, Zestiria, Path of Radiance, Zestiria, Symphonia is our new game playing order until we finish one of those games, at which case it'll change again. And I was trying to think, I don't want to be playing more than 3 games concurrently anymore, because that's a lot. So once we get down below 3 games is when I'll start our next playthrough. And I think our next playthrough, I have many games I'd like it to be, and there's a lot of games I do want to play, none of which will hopefully be as long as this. But I've had this Resident Evil disc sitting in a zippy bag for way too long now, so I think that's going to be the next thing we play. I really want to play this. Unfortunately, that game isn't supposed to be too long. It's supposed to be like 5 or 6 hours, although hard as hell. That'll be a good fun. And of course, at some point in the future, I'll be playing the DLC for this game. I don't know how soon. I probably won't be able to keep away from this game for very long, but we'll be doing that at some point. I need to buy the DLC first. Ashen Wolves will surely be an awesome time to go into that. But I consider this like the definitive playthrough of 3 houses for me, kinda. It's the same playthrough I did the very first time, like the same route, but I recorded it here and it did a raw maddening run, so that's kind of as hard as it gets. You could obviously make it harder for yourself, do some crazy challenge run, but I didn't. I don't wanna. And of course in June, 3 Hopes is coming around, so I was thinking I might like to start that game. I'm expecting it also will be less long, hopefully. I might just do the first episode when it comes out, just for the hype of it, but then not continue it until we have room in our playthrough roster, if you will. I guess we'll play it by ear. But that's a few months away, so we have time to finish some of these other games, perhaps in between then and now, so hopefully we can. But I believe that's all that taken care of. So, Foden is at peace once again, for however long that lasts. Claude hopefully did some good stuff in Elmira. He didn't really get back to us after that. He was like, we'll see each other again, and we haven't yet, so I mean, still waiting, Claude. And Danu and I lived in a garden after retiring from being the Archbishop, which I didn't think I was allowed to do, but I would have done it day one, given the choice. So a happy end for like 30% of the cast. Thank you for joining me on this 75 episode. God, how many hours was that in the end? 75 episodes, 142 hours. Great, good. That's an absurd amount of time to play one video game. And that was one file. Naturally, as I said before, it's a few less hours than that because I left the game on by accident a few times. 650 hours. Hey, when a game's good, a game's good. So thank you very, very much for coming around and joining me. I hope that you got something out of this, as I surely did. It's been a good time playing through it and getting to interact with a viewer or two of the series, getting sort of play alongside. Community is really a big part of this game, I feel. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I will see you in another series that is hopefully less 75 episodes-y than this one. With that, I've got no more things to say, no more gushing to utter. Hopefully you cried less than I did during this playthrough. And I'm just gonna be out of here now. Hopefully I'll see you around. Peace! What's with all this stuff at the back? If there's nowhere to block there, there's no door here. You can only hit these. You can't like shoot it to make it go, right? You can only make it go if you're standing right in front of it. So it's not like I could go upstairs and then tap that thing somehow and then go downstairs and then shoot this power thing. I'm not really sure what